AviationPros.com is the portal website for AMT, Airport Business, and Ground Support Worldwide magazines. Visit daily for breaking news, industry blogs, and insightful articles from our magazine's editorial team. And don't forget to sign up for our publication's daily e-newsletters. It's all at AviationPros.com.
Hello and welcome to the Aviation Pros podcast. I'm Josh Smith, editor of Ground Support Worldwide. Today we're speaking with Steve Berry, Vice President of Safety and Education at NATA, and Brandon Popovich, Manager of Safety and Training at NATA, to preview the upcoming NATA Ground Handling Safety Symposium. So Steve and Brandon, thanks so much for coming on the podcast to highlight the upcoming conference.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you so much,
really
Josh.
glad to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So as we alluded to, the 8th Annual Ground Handling Safety Symposium is coming up shortly. It's going to take place on September 17th and 18th at the Irma C. Johnson Hadley Northwest Center of Excellence for Aviation, Transportation, and Logistics at Tarrant County College down in Fort Worth, Texas. And Brandon, I know the Ground Handling Safety Symposium has been held in a few different locations throughout the years, but what has worked really well with the Fort Worth venue that prompted NATA to return to Tarrant County College for the 2024 event?
So Tarrant Community College has been a great partnership with us. And as you mentioned, we've had other locations for this event. And the partnership that we have built with the folks at that college, as in our industry, we know service is one of the, of course, the biggest driver that we all try to achieve. And the service that we receive from those the folks at the college is unmatched. We are their top priority when we are there. The location, we always try to choose a location that has a large 121 hub. So Dallas, Fort Worth, and Love Field, of course, is in the area. We are up at Alliance Airport. However, the Dallas Love area and the Dallas Fort Worth area, kind of centrally located within the U.S., we can attract attendees from the East and West Coast, and again that hub. But the facilities are top notch as well. The room that we have, very large, spacious room, gives our attendees a lot of room to spread out. Of course, we're mostly operational attendees, so there is some sort of task they have to provide back at their operation. They just cannot not be involved with their operation back at home. So those facilities, large room, there's also some smaller areas within the college that our attendees can leave the classroom during a presentation, tend to their business without disrupting the presentation, without disrupting the attendees. And building on the IT as well, we have a dedicated IT technician when we are there for the entire day, and they are on top of it. The service level that we receive is again top notch.
Yeah, exactly. You hit it on the head, Brandon. And Josh, you've been there before. You know the facility. It really is a great space. The staff is incredible, like Brandon mentioned. All the little secondary breakout rooms and privacy booths, and it's just a really welcoming and open space. Part of the charm of the GHSS is it's not just a seminar where you're sitting and getting talked to or talked at by various speakers throughout the day. It really is an interactive experience, and that setup and the way they lay everything out just makes it that much more engaging for attendees. So really to second what Brandon said, the Dallas Fort Worth area is convenient, essentially located in the middle of the U.S., 2 major 121 airports nearby, and it's also a great market for general aviation overall. We have lots of members in that area, so that section of the country has been very successful for us. We get a lot of great feedback about the space. The staff is over the top, and to be honest with you, Josh, I think we're going to keep it there, moving from this point on. I think we made that decision last year. Actually, it's just such a great location.
Yeah, it really is. And to your point about the opportunity to interact with one another, the space is really situated very well for that element in particular. We also mentioned already that this is the 8th annual Ground Handling Safety Symposium. And I guess just going back to kind of the roots of this event, what inspired NATA to begin hosting an event focused specifically on the ground handling needs of FBOs in that general aviation community?
So the NATA is a committee-driven organization. So we have committees from various aspects of general aviation, from maintenance to AAM, airport business. But the committee that drove the Ground Handling Safety Symposium is the Safety Committee. And the Safety Committee is a member. Of course, they're all members of NATA. And the Safety Committee draws talent from a wide variety of general aviation services, from operators to ground handlers and other service providers. And the Safety Committee agreed that we needed to create some sort of environment where all of our ground handling operators can come discuss their operations, discuss what they're seeing within the industry, mitigate their risks, and just share their stories. And that's where the Ground Handling Safety Symposium, I think, really excels, is a single location of operational support staff. Sometimes you get a little higher level than a middle manager, operational style manager, but those are the attendees that we are attracting to the Ground Handling Safety Symposium. And it started back in 2017 with an idea from our safety committee.
And just to add to that, one of the hallmarks of the GHSS, Josh, has always been our case studies, where we bring in folks from the industry, actual boots on the ground operational personnel, to share their stories of when things went wrong, why it went wrong, and what they did to fix it. And that's really been a key driver in some of the positive feedback that we get from this event, is people being able to share experiences, because oftentimes, you're so entrenched in your operation, it feels like your experience is unique, but then you come to an event like the GHSS and you start meeting and networking with other people and hearing our case studies from different speakers, and you realize, the struggles that someone might face at their base, they're oftentimes not unique. And it really is a collaborative educational experience to share ideas, share concepts, share solutions. And it's tremendously valuable for people to get out from their base, meet with others, share those experiences, and take home, some key, basically solve problems, right? Take home solutions to their problems.
Yeah, and I think those case studies in particular, and that opportunity to share experience, that's really been a hallmark of the event since its inception in 2017. But obviously, it's over time, the event's been able to grow as well. So, since that initial event, how has the Ground Handling Safety Symposium developed since to, the version we have of it today?
But back in 2017, when it first started, I was on the safety committee and I was working with FBOs. And the biggest attraction to me was the case studies. And just echoing a couple of things that Steve said. When you walk into that facility and you're listening to stories, you finally realize they're seeing the same things that I'm seeing, the same challenges, and I need a solution to my challenge. So building those relationships when you're there at the Ground Handling Safety Symposium can really help you find solutions to your problems. And you're not on an island by yourself. The same challenges are being experienced across the board, whether you're a very small single operator or a large chain operator and service provider. Those same challenges are being seen across the board. And it is the Ground Handling Safety Symposium that brings all these operational technicians together to share these stories and to find solutions together. But to go back to your original question about how has it emerged? So back in 2017, there was the layout of the Ground Handling Safety Symposium. The agenda was slightly different. It was case study heavy, and there was also a open forum type style towards the end of the Ground Handling Safety Symposium, which did open up the floor to a lot of questions. And we designed it to be at the end of the event, because of course you hear stories, you build in your relationships, and you're sharing stories, and you're finally realizing that I do have a question, and now I'm more comfortable asking those questions, because a lot of us will walk into that environment and be a little hesitant to share your story until you realize, again, going back to the island, you're not on an island by yourself. There's other experiences out there that are very similar to yours, if not identical. So you're really comfortable. The atmosphere is comfortable. You raise your hand and you ask that question, and you feel comfortable that you're going to find a solution. But again, going back to those case studies are really the driver for the attendees to come back to the Ground Handling Safety Symposium.
And Steve, how have you seen, the show develop? What type of growth has the conference had that you're proud to see?
Really, it's driven by what's going on in the industry at any specific moment, depending on what topics are the most relevant. Back in 2017, we had the first DEF incident, so we focused heavily on that in the first couple of years. One of the trends that we've maintained, maybe short of a trend because it hasn't been every year, but where we've heard a lot of the best response is bringing in the aircraft operators and to bring in their staff to share their perspective about what they're seeing at FBOs and at airports around the country. This year, we're bringing in the team from PlaneSense. They have a dedicated team of auditors that go around and look at various FBOs to make sure that they're meeting the standards required of PlaneSense and what their customers expect and what them as an operator require. And so we're going to have a couple of speakers from the team at PlaneSense to give their perspective. Sometimes we can get so, squarely focused on our world and the ground operations. Not to say that folks forget, who their customers are. That's certainly not my intent, but to hear it from the other perspective, right? The other side of the fence, what are the operators seeing? What are their expectations? And share that with attendees so they can bring that back to their bases.
And Brandon, we've already talked about the case studies and some of the open forum concepts to these presentations and sessions that take place during the conference. But we should mention, there are a variety of different types of presentations. And I guess, can you talk a little bit about which ones typically are the most well received by attendees?
I think the presentations that are most well received are the ones that incorporate all of your senses. So there's the typical PowerPoint with a lot of, obviously a lot of verbiage, but the case studies bring videos and pictures and a lot of interactions. And it's that interaction, that question and answer session, if you will, that really opens up the conversation during those particular sessions with the videos and of course the visuals of what actually happened, whether it be a CCTV video or something taken, during an investigation. But it's the videos and the pictures, of course, the open sessions to allow a lot of questions and interaction. And there have been times I've seen several positions that we've been in where, as the host, we kind of sit back. The presenter kind of takes a step back, and the attendees are running the show, and they're running the show between themselves and interacting, sharing the stories and possible solutions. Again, going back to those finding solutions to your challenges, because we have a lot of attendees that show up and they register for Ground Handling Safety Symposium because they have questions. Those answers to those questions are in that room. And you have to build those relationships, and eventually your question will be answered. I think it was a safe bet that every Ground Handling Safety Symposium, the attendees that walked in with questions, they all left with their answers.
Very good. And Steve, you've already alluded to, some of the speakers that attendees are going to be able to network with here. So with that in mind, can you elaborate a little bit more on this year's lineup of speakers and presenters and some of the key topics that are going to be addressed?
Sure, absolutely. So last year, we had Bob Hobby with Service Elements come in and talk about workforce challenges, especially around acquiring talent and how to bring in new talent. We got a lot of great feedback on that session from Bob. And so we've decided to bring him back again this year with a similar focus, just a little bit more specific towards retention. Within the FBO industry, and really it seems like any industry these days, turnover is a huge problem. It's very expensive to bring in and constantly find and train new talent and hire new people. So Bob's talk this year is going to be on how to keep the ones that you have and really build them up and promote them from within, and to focus on how to keep the workforce that you have in addition to, finding new talent as it's needed. We've talked heavily about the case studies. We have several on the agenda this year. We've got Jason Sparks with Signature Aviation is going to be talking about a couple of different ground handling incidents that they've seen. We have, of course, I mentioned PlaneSense. We're going to have a lightning strike case study from Jonathan Mills from our safety committee that occurred down in South Florida, where an injury was involved, what they learned, how they changed their protocols as a result of that. We're also kind of broadening the scope a little bit this year to include some of the business elements that impact safety, to include the insurance perspective. We're going to have Josh Jabor from Assured Partners coming in to talk about and give an overview of the critical role that insurance plays in ground handling. It's always there, right? Insurance is a necessary part of all business operations, but it's sort of a mystery oftentimes to the ground handling folks. What happens when claims are investigated? How are they managed? What do insurers look for when they're writing policies? And most importantly, Brandon mentioned it earlier, and we've talked about it before, is how to build relationships. I mean, relationships are everything, no matter what business you're in, but those play a key role when you're looking for an insurance provider to build a relationship with your broker to really effectively communicate your investment in safety risk management and promotion and all the various components of SMS. So that's a sort of a new angle this year, is the insurance side of the house. We're also bringing in Brian Payne with Columbus Airport to talk about relationships on an airport, right? So there's a lot that needs to happen. FBOs aren't, sole providers on an airport. There's always relationships and politics that need to be navigated. And Brian's going to talk to our attendees on how they can efficiently work with those other stakeholders at airports to ensure, the safety, security, and success of their operation. There's a lot of complex nuance and, political and business. I hate to use the word egos, but I'm gonna that you have to navigate when you're operating at an airport. And Brian's going to shed some light on that. So that's sort of a new angle this year, branching out. There's always a safety overview and how it, these different different components impact safety, but we're broadening it just a little bit to talk about, relationships on airport and then the insurance side of the house as well. And then, of course, AAM is very much, on the front burner for everybody within our industry this year. We have a great session titled AAM and FBOs Don't Panic. Essentially, what do FBOs and other ground handling providers need to know about AAM? How is that technology currently being integrated into the FBO services and the existing infrastructure that we have? What FBOs can do to adapt to stay ahead of the game? And kind of the critical role that they're going to play in what's known as the hub and spoke or point-to-point model of AAM flights. So to your question about how has it changed and evolved, those are three areas that are a little bit different from years past when we're talking about the relationship component on airports to the insurance perspective, and then also bringing in AAM this year. So we have a great diverse lineup of speakers for our attendees, and we're really looking forward to a great event.
It's interesting you say, Bob Hobby's presentation last year got really good feedback from attendees, and that helped you develop kind of the program this year. I know attendee feedback is really important for this event, and I'm curious how you've used that to help develop speaker lineups and other topics that you're going to cover at this year's event.
So I'll take that one first, Brandon, then I'll let you chime in. The insurance one is one in particular that was driven from attendees. Is there's just such a gap in understanding in how that side works, especially for a lot of the operational boots on the ground folks who may not deal with that on a day-to-day basis, but it has such a huge impact on the business overall. And so with that gap of knowledge, that we heard from our attendees last year, we noticed a trend with some of the questions is, how does this impact insurance? How do we get through our brokers to communicate to our underwriters what we're doing? How everybody's always looking for, the best deal on insurance out there. And so much of that comes from that relationship with the brokers. So we thought it'd be a great idea to listen to our attendees, bring in some experts, and in Josh Jabor from Assured Partners to really speak to that.
And just to build on what Steve was saying, so we are just a conduit between the industry and what our attendees are looking for. Of course, they are within the industry, right? So we look at reviews, what our attendees liked, what they didn't like, and then we use that information. Of course, it's always 1 year apart. So throughout that entire year, we do listen to the industry. We listen to our members, and then we run this through our safety committee again. Our safety committee consists of, I believe I mentioned earlier, but from a single operator up to a large chain operator, and there's whether they're not necessarily a C-suite, but they're in a operational kind of role. So they really have their boots on the ground and they're dirty. They are in the industry. So we truly rely on our safety committee to give us the information that we need to know what's going on in the industry. The trends that we're seeing, again, Going back to that term again, going back to the trends of the industry. What is the industry seeing? What does the industry need? And then we get that information and we put out the call for speakers. And something I've also seen in the past several years is that when we put out a call to speakers, several years ago, there was a lot of times where we had to spend a lot of our time on the phone trying to locate speakers. Past couple of years, they're calling us. So they're calling us. They understand what the Ground Handling Safety Symposium is. They understand the environment that it really incorporates, and the attendees, who's going to be there. So we do have speakers from operators, as well as you heard the list of speakers. Some of those speakers called us directly and said, I know your Ground Handling Safety Symposium is coming up. I have some things I need to share with the industry. This is the audience I need to talk to. I need a slot. That's one of the great aspects of the Ground Handling Safety Symposium is that we get the phone calls and I need to speak at your event.
It really demonstrates the relevance, value, and influence of NATA in our events and the network that we have when people reach out and they want to participate and engage with our attendees. Because like Brandon said, it's the boots on the ground people, but it is also the decision makers, right? There are directors and managers there that have the ability to influence decision making in FBOs, and speakers and sponsors want to get in front of that audience to be able to relay their message or their product or their service. It's an invaluable opportunity, and we're really proud to be leading the way on it.
I think a huge theme in this discussion about the event itself has been how important it is to have the right people in the same room together working on solutions. So, Brandon, with that in mind, are there dedicated networking opportunities built into this year's schedule?
Yeah, so the night before the Ground Handling Safety Symposium, we always hold a networking event at an off-site location. It's a little fun this year and last year as well. Just down the road from the college at Big Shots Golf, and we rent a room. We rent several booths, and it's a really good time to loosen up those ties, kind of relax. All of our attendees, of course, they start interacting, and most of them are A-type personalities. They're boots on the ground, kind of operational style technicians out there, and managers, directors, as Steve mentioned, the directors as well. And they love to share their stories. So we can really tell by the end of the night, it's a couple hours, about 2 hours. Half the attendees are playing golf, half the attendees stay in the room and just network and share their stories. Right. And that is really when the walls come down and they realize I'm really comfortable here because I'm amongst my people, my tribe. This is my tribe. I'm really comfortable sharing my stories because the person next to me has the same story. So it's really comfortable, and it really brings down those walls. And then leading into the next day, that's when the questions really start flowing because we kind of broke the ice the night before. And walking into that room the next morning, of course, continuing those same stories or just being more comfortable sharing their experiences.
For me, the networking at Big Shots Golf, it's an opportunity for a little friendly competition. There's, usually a couple of beverages, which helps melt or break the ice. And then to Brandon's point, sometimes it's difficult when people walk into a room at a seminar or a workshop or a symposium or whatever it is, and they feel comfortable sharing their stories or asking questions. It's by design that the welcome reception, well, number one, it's a welcome reception, but it's the night before, right? So people have a chance to kind of interact and break that ice and get to know one another so that they're more comfortable the next day to ask those questions that they might be more reserved about. So again, we're back at Big Shots Golf. They've been a great event host for us each year. The ability for people to have some food, have some drinks, hit some golf balls. It really is a great opportunity to network and meet with other people leading into the next day's agenda for the Ground Handling Safety Symposium. It's a great event and a great time.
Any conference, requires some assistance behind the scenes and some extra help, and I'm certain the Ground Handling Safety Symposium is no exception to that. Steve, are you working with any key sponsors to put on this year's event?
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. None of this stuff happens without the benefit and support of our sponsors. Atlantic Aviation is a returning sponsor this year. They've been great partners with us. Naples Airport, AvFuel, and then of course our friends over at NDX with their NDX Central platform, providing FBO insights into ramp efficiency and fuel quality. Their inspections module is a fully ATA 103 compliant digital quality control record keeping solution. Those guys are doing some really cool stuff. A great team to work with. They'll be at the event this year, and looking forward to meeting with them and our other sponsors and attendees. And of course, Ground Support Worldwide, right? I mean, you guys have been great partners with us as well, helping us do this podcast. You know, we get your magazines out there to our attendees. We work with each other closely, and we really value the relationship we built with you guys and your support of this event as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're proud to be a partner in an event that drives safety as much as this one does. And, you know, maybe just a good place to wrap up here. It may be an opportunity for each of you to share some closing thoughts. Starting with you, Brandon, are there any other components of the 2024 symposium that you're most excited about?
The one I'm always excited about is might just be kind of regurgitating the same information here, but it's building the relationships. That this industry is so vast and so wide, but when you start realizing that it's a really, really small world, we're all in it for the same reason as service providers, FBOs. The end game is always the same, right? You want a safe and efficient operation. Everybody goes home to their family safe, and all of your customers' assets go back to their home base in the same condition, right? It's how we get there that can differ. And when you're sharing those stories and realizing that you might be with that small operator or a large chain, you share the same stories and you build those relationships, and then you create your little tribe. You might have, a text group from those folks that you met at a ground handling safety symposium, and you run ideas back and forth with each other or share more stories. I had this happen. Has anybody experienced something like this? Talking about whether it be equipment or service or different levels of service. Or different situations that they have found. So just building those relationships is really key to the ground handling safety symposium for me. And any way that I can help be the conduit and introduce those attendees with the speakers or vice versa, matching other attendees up. I know who you need to speak with, follow me, and make those connections and just build those relationships.
Yeah, Brandon, and I'm going to echo that, Josh. It's all about the relationship building, both, reinforcing old friendships and seeing faces that we haven't seen in a year or more. We are, always on the road and spread out and traveling and working remotely. It's just such a good time to see old faces and make new friends and watch how people have grown, right? People have been coming to this for 8 years now. Somebody that might have started out as a line service tech is now manager or director or lead or whatever the case may be, watching people mature through their career and move up and then bring in the next batch of talent. And like Brandon said, connecting people. That's so much of what NATA does as a trade association, is bring people together and help foster connections. And it's one of the things I look forward to most with any event, but in particular the GHSS is watching and facilitating those relationships and watching them grow. And it's an awesome experience, and we're excited for it again.
All right. Well, very good. Once again, the Ground Handling Safety Symposium will take place September 17th and 18th down in Fort Worth, Texas. And while we conclude this edition of the Aviation Pros podcast, I'd like to thank our guests once again. That's Steve Barry and Brandon Popovich of NATA. Again, for more information about their association and the 2024 NATA Ground Handling Safety Symposium, please visit www.nata.aero. And for more information about business aviation ground handling best practices, GSE, and more, you can stay up to date by subscribing to Ground Support Worldwide's daily newsletter. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Aviation Pros podcast, subscribe to it wherever you download your podcasts, rate and review it, and be sure to share it with your colleagues in the industry. And as always, please continue to visit AviationPros.com.